In the farthest corner of the Andromeda Galaxy, where stars seemed to fade into endless darkness, a small Imperial scout ship drifted silently through the void. The ship belonged to the vast Galactic Empire, a powerful civilization that ruled countless worlds with an iron grip. On board, Captain Ryan Keller stood on the bridge, staring at the main screen as his crew worked tirelessly around him. They were scanning the area for any signs of activity, but so far, nothing unusual had appeared. It was supposed to be a routine patrol, just another boring mission in the endless expanse of space. Suddenly, Lieutenant Sarah Blake, the ship's science officer, called out from her station. Her voice was calm, but carried a hint of urgency. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, pointing at her monitor. Keller moved closer, his eyes narrowing as he studied the data. There, on the edge of their sensors range, was something massive. At first glance, it looked like a derelict ship, floating lifelessly in the emptiness of space. But there was something strange about it. Its shape was unlike anything they had ever encountered before. Sleek and angular, it seemed almost predatory, as if it were waiting for something. Keller frowned. "Can we get a closer look?" he asked. Blake nodded and adjusted the scanners, zooming in on the mysterious object. As the image became clearer, the tension on the bridge grew thicker. The ship was enormous, easily dwarfing even the largest vessels in the Imperial fleet. Its surface was smooth and metallic, with faint glowing lines running along its hull like veins of energy. There were no visible weapons or markings to indicate its origin. It didn't match the design of any known alien race, or human ships, for that matter. "It can't be human," Keller muttered under his breath, though doubt lingered in his mind. Humanity had been confined to Earth for centuries after the Empire's rise to power. The Empire had stripped humans of their ability to explore space, keeping them isolated and powerless. Yet stories persisted, whispers of rogue factions secretly building ships and technologies beyond Imperial control. Could this be one of those ships? Keller shook his head. No, it was impossible. Even if such groups existed, how could they create something so advanced without being detected? Lieutenant Blake interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever this thing is, it's not using conventional power sources. I've never seen anything like it." She hesitated for a moment before adding, "And the materials. They don't match anything in our database." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. None of them wanted to admit it, but the ship gave off a feeling of unease, as if it didn't belong in this part of the galaxy, or this time. Keller took a deep breath and made a decision. "Prepare a probe," he ordered. "We'll send it in for a closer inspection. Let's see if this thing reacts to us." Minutes later, the small probe launched from the scout ship and began its approach. As it drew nearer to the mysterious vessel, the crew watched intently on their screens. For a while, nothing happened. Then, just as the probe reached the edge of the ship's hull, the entire vessel lit up. Bright lights flickered across its surface, illuminating the surrounding darkness. The crew gasped in unison. It wasn't just waking up, it was alive. Before anyone could react, a message crackled over their communication systems. It was garbled at first, but then a voice emerged, deep, mechanical, and unmistakably speaking Galactic Standard. "You are trespassing," the voice said coldly. "Leave immediately." Keller froze. The language was human. There was no mistaking it. But how? Who or what was behind the ship? He glanced at his crew, who looked back at him with wide eyes. Whatever this was, it was clear one thing. The Empire wouldn't take this discovery lightly. Captain Ryan Keller stood frozen on the bridge of the scout ship, his mind racing as the mechanical voice echoed through the cabin. The message was clear. They were not welcome. But the fact that it had been delivered in Galactic Standard, a language created by humans, was more unsettling than the warning itself. Lieutenant Sarah Blake broke the silence first. "Sir," she said cautiously, "if this ship is human-made, we need to figure out who built it and why. This changes everything." Keller nodded slowly, still processing the implications. He knew the Empire wouldn't tolerate the idea of humans developing advanced technology outside their control. If word got out about this ship, it could spark panic, or worse, rebellion. For now, though, they needed answers. "We'll send a boarding party," he decided aloud. "Commander Jake Monroe will lead it. Prep a shuttle immediately." Minutes later, Commander Monroe and his team climbed into the small shuttlecraft. Monroe was a seasoned officer with years of experience under his belt, but even he felt a sense of unease as they approached the massive warship. Up close, its size was overwhelming. The glowing lines along its hull pulsed faintly, casting eerie shadows across the shuttle's windows. As they maneuvered closer, the ship's surface seemed almost alive, shifting slightly as if aware of their presence. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" one of the crew members asked nervously. Monroe didn't answer. Instead, he focused on finding an entry point. After a few tense moments, they located what appeared to be a docking bay and guided the shuttle inside. The bay was dimly lit, and the airlock opened without resistance, allowing them to step onto the mysterious vessel. The interior was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls shimmered faintly, as if made of liquid metal, and the corridors stretched endlessly in both directions. There were no signs of life, but the ship hummed softly around them, a constant reminder that they weren't alone. Monroe signaled for his team to spread out and search for clues. They moved cautiously, weapons drawn, unsure of what might await them. It wasn't long before they found something, a room filled with strange equipment and displays. One screen showed a star map marked with unfamiliar routes leading back toward Earth. Another displayed schematics of advanced propulsion systems far beyond Imperial capabilities. Scattered across the floor were personal belongings. A tattered journal, a faded photograph of a smiling woman holding a child, and a dog-eared book titled Humanity's Legacy *. Everything pointed to one conclusion: this ship was human-made. Monroe picked up the journal and flipped through its pages. Most of it was written in shorthand, but one name appeared repeatedly: Emily Dawson. Whoever she was, she seemed to have played a key role in building this ship. As he read further, he noticed references to experiments involving quantum slitstream drives, technology so advanced that many scientists believed it impossible. Before Monroe could finish reading, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed overhead, bathing the room in an ominous glow. "We need to leave. Now," Monroe shouted, shoving the journal into his pack. His team scrambled to follow him back to the shuttle, but the ship seemed determined to stop them. Doors began sealing shut behind them, forcing them to take alternate routes. At one point, they encountered a group of drones hovering in their path. The machines emitted high-pitched whines, their sensors locking onto the intruders. "Keep moving," Monroe ordered, firing at the nearest drone. His team followed suit, narrowly avoiding blasts of energy as they fought their way back to the docking bay. By the time they reached the shuttle, adrenaline coursed through their veins. As they launched away from the warship, Monroe glanced back at the looming vessel. It was silent again, its lights dimming as if nothing had happened. Back aboard the scout ship, Keller listened intently as Monroe reported what they had discovered. "This isn't just some rogue faction," Monroe concluded grimly. "Whoever built this ship has knowledge and resources we can't even imagine. And if they're willing to defend themselves like that, we're dealing with something far bigger than we thought." Keller nodded, knowing their discovery would shake the Empire to its core. The news of the mysterious warship spread quickly through the ranks of the Galactic Empire. Within hours, it reached the ears of Emperor Gregory Hartwell, who was known for his sharp mind and even sharper temper. He sat in his private chambers aboard the capital station, a sprawling fortress that orbited the Empire's central planet. The room was dimly lit, with holographic displays flickering faintly around him. Hartwell paced back and forth, his heavy boots echoing on the metal floor. His advisors had just finished briefing him on the situation, and he didn't like what he heard. Admiral Daniel Carter stood nearby, his posture rigid as he awaited the Emperor's response. Carter was a tall man with graying hair and a stern expression, respected by many but feared by all. He had spent decades climbing the ranks of the Imperial fleet, earning his position through loyalty and ruthless efficiency. Now he found himself caught between duty and uncertainty. "Your Majesty," he began cautiously, "if this ship is indeed human-made, we must act swiftly. If others learn of its existence, it could destabilize the Empire." Hartwell stopped pacing and turned to face him. His piercing blue eyes locked onto Carter's. "Human-made," he snapped, his voice dripping with disbelief. "You're telling me that some ragtag group of humans managed to build something like this without us knowing? Do you have any idea how absurd that sounds?" Carter hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "It does seem unlikely, Your Majesty, but the evidence suggests otherwise. The language, the markings, the technology, it all points to human origins. Whether they built it themselves or stole it from someone else remains unclear. What matters now is containing the situation before it spirals out of control." Hartwell clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. He had spent years crushing rebellions and silencing dissent to maintain the Empire's dominance. The thought of humans, his own species, posing a threat to that power was infuriating. "Find out who built this ship," he ordered, his voice low and dangerous. "And if they refuse to cooperate, destroy them. I won't let anyone challenge my authority. Not humans, not aliens, not anyone." Carter nodded stiffly. "Understood, Your Majesty." He knew better than to argue. Hartwell's orders were absolute, and failure was not an option. As he left the chamber, his mind raced with possibilities. Who could be behind this? How had they managed to stay hidden for so long? And most importantly, how could he neutralize the threat without causing panic among the Empire's citizens? Back on the scout ship, Captain Ryan Keller and his crew were already preparing for their next move. Keller had sent a detailed report to Admiral Carter, including Commander Monroe's findings from the boarding mission. Though he hadn't received specific instructions yet, Keller knew it was only a matter of time before the Empire dispatched a larger fleet to investigate. Until then, they were ordered to monitor the warship and avoid further contact. Lieutenant Sarah Blake sat at her station, running simulations based on the data they had collected. Her fingers danced across the controls as she tried to make sense of the ship's energy signature. "This is unlike anything we've ever seen," she muttered to herself. "If humans really built this, they've made leaps in technology that should have taken centuries." Keller overheard her and walked over. "Do you think it's possible?" he asked quietly. "Could there be other human settlements out there, working in secret?" Blake shrugged. "I don't know. But if there are, they've clearly been planning this for a long time. Whoever they are, they're not amateurs. And judging by how they reacted to our boarding party, they're not afraid to fight back." Keller frowned. The implications were troubling. If the Empire launched an attack, it could escalate into a full-blown conflict, one that might expose secrets the Empire had worked hard to bury. For now, all they could do was wait and watch. The warship remained silent, hovering in the void like a ghost. But Keller couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching them too, waiting for its next move. Commander Jake Monroe sat alone in his quarters aboard the scout ship, staring at the journal he had taken from the mysterious warship. The dim light of his cabin cast long shadows across the small room, but his focus was entirely on the worn pages. Each entry revealed fragments of a story far bigger than anyone had imagined. Written by someone named Emily Dawson, the journal spoke of a secret human colony hidden deep in uncharted space. This group, calling themselves the New Dawn Collective, had spent generations studying alien ruins and reverse engineering their technology. Their goal wasn't conquest, it was survival. As Monroe flipped through the pages, one passage caught his attention. It described experiments with quantum slipstream drives, a concept so advanced that most scientists dismissed it as science fiction. According to Dawson, these drives allowed faster-than-light travel without relying on traditional warp engines, The implications were staggering. If the Empire got its hands on this technology, it would solidify their dominance over the galaxy forever. But if the New Dawn Collective used it first, they could become unstoppable. Monroe closed the journal and leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He knew Admiral Carter wouldn't hesitate to destroy the warship if given the chance. The Empire thrived on control, and anything outside their grasp was seen as a threat. Yet something about this felt wrong. These people weren't invaders or rebels. They were survivors, descendants of humanity trying to carve out a future for themselves. Could they really be blamed for wanting freedom? Meanwhile, aboard the Imperial Capital Station, Emperor Gregory Hartwell grew increasingly agitated. Reports from Captain Keller's crew painted a troubling picture. The warship was not only human-made but also far more advanced than anything in the Empire's arsenal. Worse still, public rumors were starting to spread. Senator Laura Peterson, a vocal critic of the Emperor's policies, had somehow learned about the discovery and began questioning the Empire's narrative during a live broadcast. This so-called threat might not be what it seems, Peterson argued, her voice calm but firm. If humans built this ship, we need to ask ourselves why. Are they enemies, or are they victims of the Empire's oppression? For centuries, we've been told that humanity is weak and powerless. What if that's a lie? Her words sparked outrage among some and hope among others. Across the galaxy, citizens debated whether the Empire had deliberately suppressed knowledge of other human settlements. Social media platforms buzzed with speculation, and independent journalists scrambled to uncover the truth. Among them was Nathan Cole, a young reporter known for his investigative skills. Using leaked intel provided by an anonymous source, Cole published an expose detailing the Empire's history of silencing dissenting voices. His article included classified documents suggesting that humanity's confinement to Earth had been a deliberate choice, designed to keep the population docile and dependent. Back on the scout ship, Lieutenant Sarah Blake noticed the growing unrest while monitoring communications. She shared her findings with Captain Keller, who listened grimly. "This is getting out of hand," he said, rubbing his temples. "The Empire won't tolerate this kind of chaos. They'll want to act fast." Keller's prediction proved correct. Within hours, Admiral Carter arrived with reinforcements, a massive fleet of warships ready to intercept the mysterious vessel. As the fleet approached, Commander Monroe prepared another boarding mission, determined to find a peaceful resolution. He reached out to Captain Keller privately, urging him to help broker communication between the two sides. "If we rush into a fight, innocent lives will be lost," Monroe said. "We owe it to them, and to ourselves, to try talking first." Keller hesitated but eventually agreed. He sent a message directly to the warship, identifying himself as a fellow human descendant. To everyone's surprise, the ship responded. A holographic figure appeared on screen, a woman in her late 30s with sharp features and piercing green eyes. She introduced herself as Dr. Rachel Morgan, leader of the New Dawn Collective. "We didn't build this ship to wage war," she said firmly. "We built it to survive. But we won't stand by while the Empire tries to erase us again." Her tone softened slightly. "If you're truly interested in peace, prove it. Show us you're different from the rest." For the first time since the discovery, there was a glimmer of hope. But with the Imperial fleet closing in, time was running out. The tension aboard the scout ship was palpable as Captain Ryan Keller and his crew waited for Admiral Daniel Carter's fleet to arrive. The massive warships were still hours away, but their presence loomed large in everyone's minds. Keller knew that once they arrived, diplomacy would take a backseat to military action. Admiral Carter wasn't known for compromise. He followed orders without question, and Emperor Hartwell had made it clear. The mysterious warship was a threat that needed to be neutralized. Commander Jake Monroe, however, refused to give up on finding a peaceful solution. He replayed Dr. Rachel Morgan's message over and over in his mind. Her words had struck a chord with him. Her determination to protect her people, her refusal to bow to the Empire's demands. She wasn't asking for mercy. She was demanding respect. And deep down, Monroe couldn't blame her. If what she said was true, if the Empire had deliberately suppressed humanity's potential, then maybe the New Dawn Collective wasn't the real enemy here. Monroe approached Keller later that evening, his expression serious. "We can't let this escalate into a fight," he said firmly. "If we do, innocent lives will be lost on both sides. Let me try talking to them again. Maybe I can convince them to trust us." Keller hesitated. He wanted to believe Monroe could pull it off, but the risks were enormous. If Admiral Carter found out, there would be consequences. Still, something about Monroe's conviction gave him pause. "All right," Keller finally agreed. "But you'll need to act fast. Once Carter gets here, we won't have any say in what happens next." With time running out, Monroe prepared another transmission to the warship. This time, he spoke directly to Dr. Morgan, addressing her by name. "Dr. Morgan, my name is Commander Jake Monroe. I'm part of the scout team that boarded your ship earlier. I've seen the evidence, your journal entries, your maps, your technology. I believe you when you say you're not looking for a fight. But if you don't cooperate with us now, the Empire will see you as a threat, and they won't hesitate to destroy you." There was a long silence before Morgan responded. When she did, her voice carried a mix of caution and curiosity. "Why should we trust you?" she asked bluntly. "You're part of the same empire that abandoned humanity centuries ago. What makes you different?" Monroe took a deep breath. "Because I've seen what the Empire does to those who stand in its way. I've followed orders I didn't agree with because I thought it was the only way. But this is different. You're not just fighting for yourselves. You're fighting for all of us. If we work together, maybe we can change things. Maybe we can show the rest of the galaxy that humanity isn't weak or powerless anymore." Morgan didn't reply right away. Instead, her image disappeared from the screen, replaced by static. For a moment, Monroe feared he had pushed too hard. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she reappeared. "All right," she said slowly. "We'll meet you halfway. But if this is a trick, we'll defend ourselves, and we won't hold back." Relieved but wary, Monroe turned to Keller. "They're willing to talk, but they're ready for a fight if it comes to that." As Monroe worked to arrange the meeting, Senator Laura Peterson continued her campaign against the Empire. Her speeches gained traction across the galaxy, rallying support for the New Dawn Collective. Independent journalist Nathan Cole played a crucial role, publishing more leaked documents that exposed the Empire's history of suppressing human advancement. Public opinion began to shift, putting pressure on Emperor Hartwell and his advisors. Admiral Carter, however, remained steadfast. He viewed the growing unrest as a distraction, a weakness to exploit. As his fleet closed in on the warship, he ordered his captains to prepare for battle. "We strike first," he told them coldly. "No negotiations, no delays. The Emperor wants this dealt with, and will deliver." Unaware of Carter's plans, Monroe and Keller arranged for a shuttle to rendezvous with the warship at a neutral point in space. Both sides agreed to send small delegations to discuss terms. It was a fragile truce, built on little more than hope and desperation. But as the shuttles moved closer to each other, one thing became clear: the fate of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on what happened next. The two shuttles hovered cautiously in the vast emptiness of space, their lights casting faint glows against the darkness. On one side was Commander Jake Monroe and a small team from the scout ship, representing what little hope remained for peaceful resolution. On the other side was Dr. Rachel Morgan and a group of her people, their expressions guarded but determined. The air between them crackled with tension as both sides prepared to step onto neutral ground, a barren asteroid floating nearby. Monroe was the first to disembark, his hands raised slightly to show he carried no weapons. He wore a simple uniform, free of any imperial insignias, hoping it would signal his sincerity. Behind him, Lieutenant Sarah Blake followed, her eyes scanning the area for any signs of trouble. Across from them, Dr. Morgan stepped forward, flanked by two members of her crew. She moved with quiet confidence, her sharp green eyes locked onto Monroe's. "Commander Monroe," she said, her voice steady but cool. "You've taken a risk coming here. Not everyone on my ship believes this meeting will end well." Monroe nodded. "I understand your concerns, Dr. Morgan. But I'm not here to deceive you. If we don't find a way to work together, things will only get worse, for all of us." Morgan studied him for a moment before gesturing toward the asteroid's surface. "Let's talk." They walked in silence for a few steps, each side keeping a safe distance. When they finally stopped, Morgan spoke again. "Tell me why I should trust the Empire. For centuries, they've kept humanity trapped on Earth, stripped us of our dignity, and erased our history. What makes you think they'll change now?" Monroe hesitated, knowing the weight of her words. "You're right. They won't change easily. But not everyone in the Empire agrees with how things are done. Some of us see the cracks in the system, the flaws that hold us back. Your technology, your survival. It proves that humanity is capable of more than the Empire wants us to believe. If we join forces, maybe we can create something better." Morgan's expression softened slightly, but skepticism lingered. "And what about Admiral Carter? His fleet is already on its way. Do you really think he'll listen to reason?" Before Monroe could respond, an alarm blared from the scout ship. Blake quickly checked her communicator. "Sir, Admiral Carter's fleet has arrived ahead of schedule. They're deploying fighters and locking weapons on the warship." Monroe cursed under his breath. "We need more time," he shouted into his comms. "Tell them to stand down." But it was too late. The warship reacted instantly, launching drones that swarmed the Imperial fighters. Bright flashes of energy lit up the void as blasts streaked through space. Both delegations turned to watch the chaos unfold, their fragile truce teetering on the edge of collapse. "This is exactly why we can't trust you," Morgan said sharply, stepping back toward her shuttle. "Your people have already made their choice." "No," Monroe called out, desperation creeping into his voice. "This isn't over. We can still stop this." As Morgan hesitated, one of her crew members pointed at the holographic displays flickering around the asteroid. Images of ancient Earth landmarks appeared, monuments, cities, and natural wonders, projected by the warship during the battle. It was a message, clear and defiant. Asterisk, remember where you came from, asterisk. Monroe looked at Morgan, pleading. "Dr. Morgan, please, let me help you. If we fight now, the Empire will use this as an excuse to crush you and anyone else who dares to dream of freedom. Is that what you want?" For a long moment, Morgan said nothing. Then, with a deep sigh, she signaled for her shuttle to power down its engines. "All right," she said quietly. "But if you betray us, Commander, there will be no second chances." Relieved but aware of the stakes, Monroe nodded. "Understood." As the fighting subsided temporarily, Monroe returned to the scout ship to relay the situation to Captain Keller. Together, they worked to convince Admiral Carter to delay his attack and allow negotiations to continue. It was a risky move, but Monroe knew it was the only chance they had. The galaxy watched and waited, unsure whether this fragile alliance would hold or shatter into war. The battle between the Imperial fleet and the mysterious warship raged on, filling the void of space with bursts of light and energy. Admiral Daniel Carter watched from the bridge of his flagship, his jaw clenched in frustration. Despite the Empire's superior numbers, the warship's advanced technology gave it an edge that was hard to ignore. Drones darted through the chaos, disabling entire squadrons of fighters with precision EMP bursts. Pilots scrambled to regroup, but fear spread quickly among the ranks. This wasn't just a fight, it was a demonstration of power. Commander Jake Monroe stood nearby, trying to reason with Carter. "Sir, we need to pause the attack," he urged. "Dr. Morgan is willing to negotiate. If we keep pushing them, they'll have no choice but to retaliate. And trust me, they can do far worse than what we've seen so far." Carter glared at him, Negotiations won't save us, Commander. That ship is a threat to the Empire's stability. If word gets out that humans built something like that, it will inspire rebellion across the galaxy. We can't afford to show weakness. Monroe gritted his teeth. He knew Carter was right about one thing. The Empire couldn't afford to look weak. But there was another truth at play here. Humanity itself was at a crossroads. If the Empire destroyed the New Dawn Collective, it would crush any hope of unity or progress. If they worked together, however, they might build something greater than either side could achieve alone. Back aboard the warship, Dr. Rachel Morgan and her crew prepared for the worst. The ship's defenses were holding strong, but Morgan knew they couldn't withstand the full force of the Imperial fleet forever. She turned to her second-in-command, a man named Alex Grayson. "If this goes south, make sure the data survives," she said firmly. "Everything we've learned, everything we've built, it has to live on, even if we don't." Grayson nodded, though his expression was grim. "We're not giving up yet, Rachel. Not while we still have a chance." As the fighting continued, Monroe managed to establish another communication link with Morgan. "Dr. Morgan," he said urgently, "we need to act now. I've convinced Captain Keller to back my proposal, but Admiral Carter isn't budging. If you can provide proof of your claims, evidence that the Empire has suppressed human advancement, it might sway public opinion enough to buy us time." Morgan hesitated, then nodded. "We'll send you the files," she said. "But be warned, they won't take this lying down." Within minutes, encrypted data packets began streaming toward the scout ship. Lieutenant Sarah Blake worked feverishly to decode them, her eyes widening as she sifted through the information. Star maps, research logs, and classified documents revealed decades of systematic suppression by the Empire. It was damning evidence, enough to shake the foundation of Imperial authority. Monroe wasted no time sharing the findings with Senator Laura Peterson, who had been waiting anxiously for any opportunity to challenge the Emperor's narrative. With Nathan Cole's help, Peterson released the documents to the public in a massive exposé. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Citizens across the galaxy demanded answers, accusing the Empire of betraying humanity's potential. Protests erupted on multiple planets, and even some Imperial officers began questioning their loyalty. Emperor Gregory Hartwell called an emergency meeting with his advisors, his face red with anger. "How did this happen?" he demanded. "Who leaked this information?" Admiral Carter shifted uncomfortably. "Your Majesty, we believe it came from the scout ship. Commander Monroe may have played a role." Hartwell slammed his fist on the table. "Then deal with him, but discreetly. For now, we must focus on damage control. Send representatives to meet with Morgan's people. If we can't crush them openly, we'll have to find another way." Reluctantly, Carter agreed to stand down temporarily, allowing negotiations to proceed. Representatives from both sides gathered aboard a neutral orbital platform, their expressions tense but hopeful. As talks began, Morgan presented her case clearly and forcefully. "We aren't asking for forgiveness," she said. "We're asking for recognition. Humanity deserves a place among the stars, not as subjects of the Empire, but as equals." The discussions were long and difficult, but slowly, a fragile agreement began to take shape. For the first time in centuries, humanity stood united, not under the Empire's banner, but as partners shaping the future of the galaxy. The negotiations aboard the neutral orbital platform stretched for days, each side wary of the other, but united by a shared goal: survival. Dr. Rachel Morgan and her representatives from the New Dawn Collective sat across from Imperial delegates, their faces set with determination. Commander Jake Monroe acted as a mediator, his presence a reminder of the fragile trust that had been built between the two groups. The discussions were tense, filled with moments of doubt and bursts of hope, but slowly an agreement began to emerge. The Empire, under pressure from public outrage and mounting evidence of its suppression of human advancement, agreed to recognize the New Dawn Collective as an independent entity. In return, Morgan's people promised to share their knowledge of quantum slitstream technology, but only under strict conditions. The technology would be used for peaceful exploration, not military conquest. Both sides knew this compromise was risky, but it was the best chance they had to avoid further conflict. As the final terms were hammered out, Emperor Gregory Hartwell watched from afar, seething with frustration. He had no choice but to accept the outcome. The tide of public opinion had turned against him, and even some of his most loyal officers were questioning his leadership. For the first time in decades, the Empire's grip on the galaxy felt less certain. But Hartwell wasn't ready to give up. He vowed to find a way to regain control, even if it took years. Back aboard the warship, the mood was cautiously optimistic. Dr. Morgan addressed her crew, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This isn't the end of our fight," she said. "It's just the beginning. We've proven that humanity can rise above the chains the Empire tried to bind us with. Now we have a chance to build something better, not just for ourselves, but for everyone." Her words resonated deeply with her people. They had sacrificed so much to reach this point, and though the road ahead would be difficult, they were ready to face it together. Morgan turned to Alex Grayson, who gave her a small, proud smile. "We did it," he said quietly. "Against all odds, we did it." Commander Monroe stood on the bridge of the scout ship, staring out at the stars. The warship loomed nearby, its glowing lines pulsing faintly in the darkness. He thought about everything that had happened, the battles, the risks, the moments of doubt, and felt a sense of quiet pride. For years, he had followed orders without question, believing the Empire's way was the only way. But now, he saw a glimmer of hope for something greater. Humanity wasn't weak or powerless. It was resilient, innovative, and capable of extraordinary things. Captain Ryan Keller joined him, breaking the silence. "Do you think this truce will hold?" he asked, his tone skeptical but tinged with hope. Monroe shrugged. "I don't know, but for now, it's enough. Maybe someday, people will look back on this moment and see it as the start of something new." Across the galaxy, the impact of the agreement rippled outward. Senator Laura Peterson hailed it as a victory for humanity, urging other oppressed groups to stand up and demand change. Nathan Cole continued to investigate the Empire's secrets, determined to expose any further wrongdoing. Public opinion shifted dramatically, with many citizens calling for reforms within the Empire's government. For the first time in centuries, humanity stood united, not as subjects of a single ruler, but as partners shaping their own destiny. The alliance between the New Dawn Collective and the Empire was fragile, built on mutual distrust and hard-fought compromises. But it was a start. As ships from both sides departed the orbital platform, heading toward an uncertain future, one thing was clear: the galaxy would never be the same again. And somewhere, deep in the void of space, the stars seemed a little brighter,